If the Hallmark Channel had its way, we'd all have predictable and happy endings to every single one of our Christmas experiences. Sure, there might be some rough patches we hit along the way, but in the end, the love story, it would work out. That person who was struggling would get the job they hoped for. The kids would be healthy just in time for the snow to start falling and the Christmas bells to start ringing. With all due respect to my Christmas Hallmark movie loving friends, I know who you are out there, this predictable formula happens every single time in these movies, doesn't it? And maybe we love these movies because we take one look at our own lives and we realize that that is not at all the story we've been dealt. In the Bible, in the book of Matthew, it's the only place where we really get a glimpse into Joseph's character. We learn that Joseph was pledged in marriage to Mary, but before they were married, she found out that she was pregnant. We learn that Joseph was a faithful Jew, and because he had cared deeply about upholding the laws and the traditions of his day, he had made up his mind to divorce her quietly. Not to do it publicly, but to do it in a quiet way, the Bible tells us. Now that little detail, actually, I think it tells us something about Joseph's character. Remember, I just said he was a law-abiding Jew, so he could have taken the opportunity to oust his bride-to-be, to tell the whole world that she was somehow pregnant before they were married, that the child wasn't his. He could have separated himself from her in a really mean and ugly way. But we get the sense that Joseph may have really loved her. He would have respected her even. There might have even been a little part of him that wanted to believe her, even if he didn't understand. We hear just a few verses later, after he had considered this, divorcing her, an angel of the Lord appeared to him and said in a dream, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins." And all of this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. Now I want to pause for a minute just to think about the characters of angels that show up in several places in the Christmas story, both here and in earlier sessions. We heard about these angels in the story of Zechariah and Elizabeth, and the story of Mary, and the story of the shepherds. And now as an angel appears here to Joseph. And we don't really know what angels mean. I don't know that it's worth analyzing what that is or what that isn't when it comes to these stories. But if we think about the ideas of angels that we picture in our minds, as we see them depicted, whether it's a nativity set or a Christmas picture of some sort, I default in thinking about all the good and beautiful things that angels tell us, the good news of great joy that the angel brought to the shepherds. We think first about the joyful news, and we forget about the fear that all of these people experienced. Joseph, do not be afraid. To the shepherds, do not be afraid. When the angel appears to Mary, we read that she was greatly troubled. We need to remind ourselves that this was not how things should have been for any of these characters. These were not the situations that a teenage unwed woman would expect herself to be in, or things that a law-abiding Jew would ever dream he'd find himself dealing with. There was fear, there was uncertainty, there was confusion. Those are part of the Christmas story too. Sure, we'll all sing, "Joy to the world, the Lord has come." We'll ring jingle bells and hope that spirits are merry and bright at this time of year. But that's not the default mode. And if we think to the end of the story, of this entire story of our Christian faith, this baby who was born would ultimately be killed by the very people who were welcoming him, who learned from him, who argued the authorities on his behalf at one point. It's anything from a story with a neat and tidy bow on it. And maybe that's what we need to remember. This Christmas story is for you and for me, not because it's perfect, not because it's predictable, because it's messy. It's got moments filled with fear, with real life confusion. And that is exactly how God shows up for you and for me.